when you were going into law school and, becoming a lawyer is quite a feat as itself. It takes a lot of discipline and a lot of studying. Tell us a little about what that was like. Like, how did you study even? How did
Well,
you learn all these books and books that you needed to go through and read?
so everything takes me about 5 times longer. If it takes you an hour to do something, it takes me about 5 hours to do the same thing. So it's kind of a
Wow.
1 to 5 ratio.
Hmm.
So ultimately, I just had a team of readers that I worked with, and we would basically just work 7 days a week in order to keep
Mm.
up with the readings and the materials. And so for me, it was just a game of trying to keep up and not fall behind and stay on top of what everybody else was doing. But most importantly, it was, you had a great team of people that were with you, and you just had to kind of keep working and doing whatever you could to just get through it.
Hmm. And what kept you motivated? Was it that drive for purpose and mission that you spoke
Yeah,
about?
it was that notion of just becoming a lawyer and how much I wanted it and
Mm.
how much, I just believed in it and just what I knew I could do with it. That if I had the chance to get a law license, that I would make it count and that I would be able to do great things with it and that I'd be able to have an impact with it. So ultimately, it just made the want and the need and the drive even higher and harder.
And I understood you did do, like, tremendous things with it. You tell us a little about the things that you
So
did when you
I
were there.
I did all public service or pro bono, which means for the good, which is I
Mhm.
never charged for legal representation. And I would
Mm.
represent folks who otherwise couldn't afford legal representation. So I took on really complicated, really challenging cases that nobody else would take on or that people didn't want to really have to get involved with because there was no money in it. But I
Mm.
never really cared if there was money in it or not. I just wanted to do it because I believed in what I was doing and I believed that it was important and I believed that it really mattered. So I dedicated myself to doing it. So I represented paralyzed veterans and made sure that bus systems were accessible so that if you needed to use a wheelchair lift, the bus would have a chair lift that would operate and function correctly. And the case that I had against the Department of Transportation in Detroit ultimately set a national precedent for all public transit systems all across the country. So
Wow.
now, whenever you see the low floor buses in anywhere in the United States, that came out of the Detroit bus case. So it was a
Mm.
very significant case that made a real difference because it changed how bus systems and fixed route systems all across the country operate and function. I had the same case against the airline industry because I wanted it to be accessible so that people with disabilities could fly. And our
Mm.
case set the national standards and guidelines for accessibility in air travel, which allowed for people in wheelchairs or allowed for people with disabilities to be able to travel in a way that they weren't able to travel before. So that was a very unique and exciting case that really did translate to making aviation more open, accessible, and accommodating to people who otherwise weren't able to travel so easily. And that was a case I really
That's
took
really
pride in.
amazing.
Yeah, and
Yeah, that's amazing.
I had another case about roundabouts where they were building roundabouts, but not putting traffic control devices in. So people with disabilities couldn't cross the street safely. So
Mm.
that case set the standard for roundabout construction, in which now, whenever a roundabout is built in the United States, they have to put in the Hawk system, which is a traffic control device that makes it safe for people with disabilities to use and access the roundabout. So those are the types of cases that I used to handle. Everything from U.S. aviation to public transportation to education to road construction. One of the big cases I handled was against the University of Michigan, where I used to be a professor. And that case set national standards and national guidelines for how you build commercial facilities. So the
Mm.
concept of alteration versus repair was determined by the University of Michigan case. And it set the national benchmark and the national standards for how a commercial facility is to be constructed.
Wow, this is incredible.